Okay, Matt. So you spoke earlier about product service systems, and so I'd like you now to go on to talk more about your areas of interest around technology and innovation and so on, and behaviour and dealing with issues of sustainability.
Okay, John, with pleasure. Well, in my earlier discussion or talk, or whatever we want to call it, about product service systems, I alluded to the fact that their performance was in some way, certainly their adoption, their uptake, was dependent upon behaviour. I made reference to the fact that actually in Western societies we often draw a relationship between product ownership and welfare, and that affects our purchasing behaviour. We like to own things often, not always, but we like to own things. Well, what I want to draw out in this little clip, this little talk, is the idea actually that our behaviour really matters when we're seeking environmental solutions and trying to develop them. Lots of environmental efforts to improve environmental performance have been focused on technologies, on products, on things that we can kick. And design and innovation, as I said earlier, has been focused on reducing the amount of material that we need in these to satisfy demand, in products, and changing the materials so that we take out those which are either toxic or difficult to dispose of, and improving the energy efficiency, for example, of various products as well. So it's often we're very focused.
And the energy involved in the manufacturing process.
And the embodied energy and the energy involved in manufacturing, as well as in what we would call the use of a product in the use phase. So we've been very much focused on things that we can kick. And often when we think about improving environmental performance, when we design things and when we develop innovations, we have a view of how people are going to use those things. And that's not peculiar to or particular to eco-design or environmental innovation. In all sorts of design innovation, there is an imagining of the user, of how a user is going to use a product. And the same is true and particularly applies in the area of the environment. How somebody uses a product will affect its environmental performance. For example, if we purchase a light bulb which uses far less energy, it therefore means that it's potentially cheaper to run. Then the question becomes, well, actually, how will people use it? And we assume that they will use the light bulb in the way that they would use an ordinary light bulb, for example. But potentially, because it costs far less to run, we may use the light bulb much more. We may leave it on longer. And that's an example of what in the jargon we may call a rebound effect, where actually increases in demand, increases in use, may actually reduce the environmental performance which may be attained from the product. In the case of a light bulb, reductions in the amount of energy required for lighting. So you see, understanding behaviour is really important, and that involves understanding how products are used, how we might take on board a product and how we might adopt it, use it in our households over time. We may, for example, use something in an energy efficient way for some times, in some periods of our lives, and then later we may change and we may use them in a less environmentally friendly way. So things change actually in time. It's also possible that things may change across space, because actually there are different cultures here today in the world, and that people may use products differently in different cultures, may have different cultural sensibilities, where ownership, for example, if we go back to the example of product service systems, isn't so important as it is perhaps in Western societies. So those variables and understanding behaviour, understanding how products are used, are actually very important to feed in those data to the design process, so that we can design products and services, and we can develop innovations which meet the needs of users, but also crucially give information to users to enable them to make choices as they see fit to get the energy efficient or to make them environmentally friendly, which is dependent upon their behaviour to some extent and the choices that they make with that product. In many ways, actually, I often see eco-design, environmental design and innovation focused on products as actually giving people a choice. It actually gives users a choice to improve environmental performance. Of course, that choice isn't limitless, but it is nonetheless dependent upon people's behaviour. But I think what this tells us is that a focus on technology alone is actually insufficient. We cannot think that we're going to resolve environmental problems purely by reducing the amount of material required or changing the materials required to produce a particular product. Rather, actually, we have to think about behaviour as well, and how actually it's not when we have products, we use products, and really it's thinking about the practices, household practices, that are very deeply embedded in our everyday routines, the things that we do in the kitchen to prepare food, the household practices whereby we have food preparation devices as well as ourselves and the things that we do. It's really changing those things, those practices, which I think really count on the environmental side and have an opportunity to improve environmental performance and move us towards sustainability. And that involves, on the one hand, for sure, thinking about how we change our products and our technologies, but also thinking about how we use them. And in combination, we can analyse those and understand them as practices, as technologies and people come together to do things. When we think about the things that we do, we often actually don't think about the things that we do. We don't reflect. We just do things, and a lot is done through routine. And it may be that as we move on, and if environmental problems manifest, and certainly access to resource problems manifest, we may actually need to begin to challenge and to change those practices. I don't think for one moment that that's a big brother activity. I don't think for one moment that's a massive top-down thing. I think that's a choice of individual households on their own reflection and the circumstances that they find themselves in, that they may want to change their practices to improve their environmental performance. But nonetheless, I believe that that's where the challenges really lie. They lie in understanding the product and the behaviour in the combined and understanding those things as practices.